Alright, hello everyone. Welcome back to another episode of To The Max Outdoors. Here we are, midsummer. We've got some deer meat. Today we're going to be making some jerky. Kind of a good midsummer treat. It's July now, and obviously this meat's been in the freezer for about 6.5 months. This specific deer here was killed in our Mountaineer Heritage season with a primitive muzzleloader. First, second week of January, I'm not real sure. Fortunately, this deer was able to hang for a week and a half. The weather outside, the temperature was proper, so this deer got the dry age on the bone hanging like I like it for a week and a half. So that's why you're seeing a little bit darker. If you look here, some of this meat's a little bit darker. It's been aged, and that's how we'd like to do our deer if at all possible. If not, we'll chunk them, quarter them up, put them in the refrigerator in the garage, let them set in there in a game bag. In my opinion, that's the best way to do deer meat. You gotta age it some way. That's just what we do. But anyways, what we got here on this plate, this is what I would consider scraps or grinder meat. It's not tenderloin, it's not under tenderloin, it's not the big muscles off the rear quarters or the front quarters. This is just like some of the leg tendon, some scraps off of some roast cuts, or it's just scrap meat that you wouldn't butterfly into steaks or pound out and fry like we do in bacon grease. So this is perfect for that. Now what I've done, I've come in and I've cleaned it up pretty well, got rid of the silver skin, the sinew, any kind of little fat, whatnot. And as you see here on this plate, once I trim them up, I try to lay them on a plate, and then I put them downstairs in my deep freeze. That's been in there for about 56 minutes, 57 minutes. I wish it was a little bit stiffer than it is, but it's not. So I try to hit that hour and 10, hour and a half mark. It makes it run through this meat slicer a lot better. So what we're going to do today is we're going to make a whole piece jerky. Be like Old Trapper for reference of what it is. It'd be a whole meat style. It won't be ground up, and it's going to go in a wet marinade that we'll go over here in a minute. So what I have here is just a little standard meat slicer from a local kitchen store at the mall. It's just a household version. It's not commercial by no means, but it has a pretty good serrated blade on it, and it has 1/8 inch adjustments on the knob. I've got it set to 1/4 inch thick, and that's what we're going to do. So it's pretty simple. I cut everything. I kind of cut everything to fit this properly. It just makes it a lot easier. This one here does have a little press handle on it here. Put it in there, press it, and we'll slice them. So that's basically what we're looking at right there. So you can see that piece right there. We're in that 3/16 to 1/4 inch mark of meat, of thickness of meat, and that's perfect. Now if you want your jerky a little bit tougher, you take the long grain. If you want it easier to chew, go across the grain. There's multiple different things. I'll be honest with you, I kind of just cut the meat the best way I can to get the best piece I can. Some of them are tougher, some of them are chewier, some of them are softer. That's just, I don't really get too concerned about it. But like these longer pieces here, I'll cut it for the wide side. I won't cut it for the thin side. That's just personal preference. So anyways, I'm gonna sit here and I'm gonna cut the rest of this meat. I'll bring you back when we've got it all cut down, and I'll show you how I prep it from like the final size till going into marinade. So hang tight. All right, so what happened instantly for you probably only took me about 5 minutes. I ended up with all of my meat cut into 3/16 to 1/4 inch cuts of meat. I cut them, how we prefer to eat them. I cut them in nice long strips. I tried to get the widest piece I could get out of them possibly. We'll lay those down on the dehydrator racks, and they'll come out nice, and it'll make a nice big piece of jerky for you to eat on. Now, being that this is what I'm going to call scrap meat, you'll have different layers of connective tissue through that. I hope that comes out a little bit, but right there is a little piece of connective tissue that I personally don't want in my jerky. There's some connective tissue in between the different muscle groups, just like that, especially when you get down in along the legs of the deer, or even along the rib cage meat, you know, the sides of the rib. There's good meat all over the deer, up in the neck. There's tons of meat on a deer if you take 10 minutes and clean it off properly. And it just takes you another 5 minutes here on the backside. Clean that out of there. So, like I said, I'll cut it in my meat slicer. I'll get it to where I want it. I'll take me a little cutting board here, and then all you have to do is just run a knife up under that, and you can real quick clean everything up. So this is your final inspection process. Really simple to do. I put it on the side of my tray there. You don't want to eat that stuff. When you're eating jerky, you want to eat jerky. You want to eat good meat is what I'm trying to say. You don't want to eat that nasty stuff. So all I'm trying to say is, once you get it cut from your meat slicer, or even if you use a knife to cut it, do a final inspection on it. You know, you don't want any hair, you don't want any fat you missed. What I do is I touch every piece as I'm going in there, and this will be the best final product that I could possibly get. There again, this is take you a minute and a half. Just give yourself one last little inspection of everything, and it'll ensure that you have a good quality jerky. There's nothing worse than somebody giving you a piece of jerky at work or out and about that's got hair or fat in it. Definitely not a fan of that. So take your time and do it here. Now, while I'm doing this, we'll talk about this simple little marinade here. Now, I didn't come up with this marinade jerky mix. It's just something that I've learned from my grandfather and my uncles over the years. This has just got 9 basic ingredients in it. And like I said, it is a wet marinade. It's got Worcestershire, teriyaki, soy, lemon juice, smoked paprika, onion powder, garlic salt, coarse ground black pepper, and brown sugar. Now, as you'll see here in the bowl, I've went and combined everything, and I've just been kind of stirring it around as we've been doing this whole process. I like to try to get your dry ingredients, and especially the brown sugar, to incorporate with all the wet ingredients. The brown sugar doesn't really dissolve all that great when you're cold, and you have cold liquids, so I put it together. And like I said, in this 15-minute process, maybe, it has time to sit there and combine a little bit. We pretty typical here that we like to, you know, stretch out our deer meat as long as we can. Like I said, it's July, so we still have another 2.5–3 months till season comes out. Plus, Max likes taking this to the baseball field and eating it. It's a good source of protein. And just to be honest with you, we like eating it, so we always try to freeze a 2–3 pound pack of this stuff, and that's what this is here. This recipe is for 3 pounds. I don't think I mentioned that yet, but this is roughly 3 pounds of deer meat. And it won't last very long, and there's no curing salt in this recipe either, so it's not cured jerky. It won't last, and that's fine. 3 pounds of this stuff will go in a matter of a day and a half. It won't last, I guarantee you that. So, like I said, very important step right here. Very, very, very important step. Make sure everything is as clean and neat as possible. You should be doing it before you put it in the freezer, before you put it in vacuum bags or in a bowl or however you're going to store it. You should be inspecting everything to make sure there's no bloodshot or hair. But there again, if you get multiple people in that process, maybe everybody doesn't look at things the same as you do. So I'm fairly particular about it. So that's why you're seeing me right here touch every piece prior to going in the final step of the process. So there you have it. There's our roughly 3 pounds of whole meat jerky in there. I'm going to go ahead, and all these ingredients that I've been combining here already and letting them try to dissolve, I'm going to go ahead and pour that down in my bowl. And as you can see here in the bottom of this cup, there still is some brown sugar and all the dry goodies that didn't get in there. So take a second here and get all the goodness out we can. Then what I like to do, my little touch of love, is I'll put my hands right down in the bowl and I'll just incorporate everything as best as possible. There again, another couple seconds, you're making sure that every piece gets some, I don't know how well you can see this without me making a huge mess, but I want to try to get every piece with the dry seasoning on it. It's perfect. I can smell, if you guys had smell-o-vision right now, you'd be watering at your mouth because it smells really, really good. Take a quick second here and rinse my hands off. That's another thing, always keep a towel handy. You make a mess doing this kind of stuff and the wife, she'll probably get mad at you. Anyways, there you go. There's our product there that we're going to let marinate. Now, my personal preference is let that go 24 hours. It is 5 minutes after 1 today. Ideally, I would like that to go 24 hours. Now, in a time crunch, we're not going to get that, so I'm going to say 24 hours is the maximum and 12 hours is the minimum. So we'll get up tomorrow, I'll stir it again, and somewhere around noon, 1 o'clock tomorrow, we'll put that back on the, or we'll put it on the dehydrator for the first time. So, like I said, just a simple marinade recipe here that we've kind of come up with over the years. There again, we didn't invent it, we just kind of modified it from, you know, people over the years. So 3 pounds of meat roughly. What I have in there is 2 tablespoons of smoked paprika. Now, my personal opinion is you have to use quality ingredients. I know they're cheaper at the dollar store or cheaper at Walmart, or there's cheaper brands of it, but honest to goodness, you pay for what you get. Now, I understand that this stuff's double the price of a dollar store brand or Walmart Great Value brand, but it makes a huge difference. Paprika, this is smoked paprika also, so you get a tad bit of smoke flavor out of that. I'm personally not a fan of liquid smoke. If you are, add it in here and cut some of this back. That's just my little 2 cents about the ingredients. We'll get back to the list. So, 2 teaspoons of smoked paprika. I have 3/4 of a cup of brown sugar, and that's 3/4 of a cup packed in a measuring cup. I have 1.5 tablespoons of coarse ground black pepper. 1.5 tablespoons of onion powder. 2 tablespoons of garlic salt. Now, here in our house, we use garlic salt a lot. We really are a fan of this Lowry's garlic salt it's coarse ground garlic salt, and it has parsley in it already. There again, it's personal preference. 1.5 tablespoons of that. Now, here's something that's a little bit different. We're getting into the wet ingredients now. I don't have it wrote down on there. How about that? Yeah, I do. Lemon juice here. We like this real lemon juice. It's good, easy to use stuff. There's 1.5 tablespoons of this. Soy sauce, 1/2 cup of soy sauce. Worcestershire sauce. There again, we're a big fan of this Lee & Perrins Worcestershire sauce. There's a whole cup of Worcestershire sauce in there. I should have read this recipe before I did this, but hard to look and talk at the same time. And the final ingredient is teriyaki. We're big on teriyaki, so there's 3/4 a cup of teriyaki in there. This teriyaki is a good, really good marinade. And there again, use the brands of dry ingredients and wet ingredients that you normally cook with. You know, everybody has their preferences on what brands of stuff to use. What you see in front of me here, we're big on McCormick dry seasonings. Lowry's garlic salt's our fan. I'm a huge fan of this real lemon juice. And like I said, Lee and Perrin's Worcestershire. And this Kikkoman soy and teriyaki, that's what we use to cook with. We've marinated with it forever. So use what ingredients you like. You'll have a way better product on the backside of it. That's just my opinion. So I'll bring you back tomorrow when we put this stuff on a dehydrator, so stay tuned. All right, here we are. So we're 22 hours later. This jerky has been in this marinade for approximately 22 hours. It was like 5 minutes after 1 yesterday on the PM side when we put this in here, and today it is 11 a.m. We're in between baseball games today. I have about a 4.5, 5 hour window, so I'm gonna try to get this done. Now, just to recap, 9 simple ingredients in here. It's a wet marinade, as you can tell. Just one thing that I always do is I'll plug my dehydrator in 10-15 minutes prior to me getting, basically when I'm prepping my area here to get set up. We're downstairs in my basement in my little man cave utility room that the wife's pushed me in. As you can see here, I got some deep freezes. The top of this deep freeze happens to work perfect for me to dehydrate on. Got an outlet here solely for this refrigerator, so I'm not going to overwhelm that circuit, so I know I'm good to go. So like I said, I'll plug my dehydrator in when I'm kind of getting everything set up here, and my thought process on that is I'm letting that dehydrator warm up and get ready to. What I'm saying is I don't want to put my meat on my dehydrator before the dehydrator is warmed up. It's kind of like preheating the oven in my opinion. So what I'll do is, like I said, I put my racks on there and then just simply take them off. And then what I'll do is I'll start with the base layer, and because this is a wet marinade, I'll just start laying them out. I got some paper towels there. I'll build my trays. I'll build all my trays as what I'm trying to say is I'll build all my trays over top of napkin, and it doesn't get all that wet marinade inside your dehydrator. Anybody that's ever tried to clean a dehydrator, they're pretty tough to clean on the bottom side like that. So it's just one little step here that I don't know, it might be a tip, maybe everybody does it. Yeah, you're going to get dirty. I'll try to use tongs as much as I can, but sometimes you got to get in there and press all your pieces of meat flat. When you're laying this stuff on the dehydrator, you definitely want it as flat as possible. You don't want any meat laying on top of each other. It just helps everything dehydrate evenly, basically. That's kind of the thought process behind it. And I'm not going to overload these trays either. Like I said, this is a smaller batch of jerky, so we've got definitely got enough trays that we won't have to get too many in a pile. These trays here, you can go either side with them, so they just alternate. This is a Presto Dehydrator, and I've had it for, I've probably had this thing about 5 years now. Really happy with it. Just a household version. It's a inexpensive one from, I don't know, probably the kitchen store at the mall. That's where the wife likes to shop and buy a lot of kitchen appliances and stuff. If anybody wants any more information on this, it'll be down in the description. I'll put the name of the meat slicer and the name of this dehydrator in the description of this video, along with the recipe. And that's something else too. So if somebody makes this recipe or a version of it, you know, comment down and let me know what you do. Heck, I'd like to see videos from other people too, how they make their own jerky. You know, I kind of like trying other recipes. You know, somebody's always got something better or different. But like I said, it's a good little good little midsummer treat. Definitely a good midsummer treat to have some deer meat. You know, you're in the middle of summer and get your mind on hunting again, basically. As you can probably see the bottom of that bow there hanging in front of you, that's the bow fishing bow. Haven't had time to do any bow fishing to mount anything this summer. It's just been extremely busy. I can't help it. I try to be neat and use the tongs, and this is what I normally do. I normally have my hands in everything, pushing everything down nice and flat. See, that meat kind of rolls up when it's in that marinade. That's where your hands come into. That's where your hands come into play. Pardon me there. Sorry about that. I was getting a phone call. We're getting down to the end here now. It's going to work out pretty good. What we got there, we got 4 trays there that we just did. Like I said, pretty evenly spaced out. I'll give you a shot of this jerky here. See how all the nice dry seasonings, every piece has got a good amount of dry seasoning on it, and the meat has all took the marinade as good as it's going to get. You know, I think there's a limit on how long you can marinate stuff. It'll only penetrate it so far in my experience. So there you go. We have successfully filled our trays. I always like to put the least amount of jerky or meat on the top tray, because that's going to be the one that struggles to get the air for the first part. Like I said, as you can see there, I'll go ahead and shake that off some more, but we do have some moisture there. I'll try to wipe the trays off too, because this stuff is hard to clean up. Once it gets baked on there, it's hard to clean off. So there you go. That's as simple as that is. All you end up with is some marinade there. Now, a lot of times when we're making a lot of marinade at once, what I'll do is I'll cut a bunch. This type of dehydrator here that has these 4 trays, about 5 pounds of raw meat is about all I can fit on this one. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll do like 15 pounds at a time in 5-pound batches. And once this goes in here, I'll put more meat in my marinade, and then when this comes off, I can start the process over again. That way you don't waste the marinade. But unfortunately here in midsummer, I only did enough just for one little batch here, so that's what we got. But in my opinion, this marinade is reusable twice, maybe 3 times, but I wouldn't go any further than that. So all right, everybody, so here we are. This is the final product. Now, I did tell you when I was putting it on the dehydrator that we were in between baseball games today, and it's been a fairly long day. We put this stuff on the dehydrator at about 11 o'clock this morning, somewhere in that neighborhood. This jerky was on that dehydrator for 4 hours and 4 minutes exactly. And then I myself thought that was long enough to take it off there. Now, the way I check jerky for the consistency and the desired temperature and texture that we like is when you take a fairly substantial piece of your meat, when you bend it like that, you want to look for like a white color in the grain of the meat. Now, I don't want that white color to break. That means it's overdone. And I don't want that to be mushy, like it's not done. I have one of them instant thermometers that hopefully that'll show up there. When you separate the grain, it turns white. That's what I look for. That's what I like. That makes that meat pliable. It's got some good texture to the meat itself. That's what we really like. So 160, 165 degrees in that white when you separate the grain. That's what I look for. That's really good jerky. As you can see there, all of our dry spices and seasoning, you know, they've stayed on pretty much every piece. Now, my personal opinion, this recipe here, it's got more brown sugar in it than I'm a big fan of. Now, that being said, it's still fantastic and phenomenal. That's the way Max likes it. That's the way Carrie, my wife, likes it. And that's the way the most of Max's friends like this. And I'll be honest with you, this plateful right here is going to go to the baseball game with them in the morning. And it probably won't make it through the first 10 minutes we're there. So this recipe, in my opinion, is fairly easy for everybody to eat. It's got black pepper, white black peppercorns in it. That's really all the spice you get out of it, and nobody's really complained about it. Me personally, when I'm making my own batch, I'll cut some of that sugar back by, say, like a quarter or a third of a cup. Then I'll add some red pepper flakes or even some ground up habaneros, but we'll get into another video about that later. So there again, I look for that 160, 165. I look for that meat. You know, I look for the grain of that meat to separate white. When you fold it up, I look for it to separate white. That's what I look for. That's what I look for when I, you know, am looking for the proper texture and consistency of the jerky. So it's a beautiful evening. We got about I don't know, hour and 10, hour and 15 minutes of sunlight left. It's going down over the hill here. It's finally not crazy humid here. We actually get to set out on the porch for a bit. And we're going to wind down the day here and get ready to do it all over again with the humidity back up. So there again, this recipe will be down in the description part of this video, along with that meat slicer and along with the dehydrator. I think it's a pretty simple recipe. I'd love to see one of you guys do it, and I'd love to see your guys' feedback on a recipe. There again, there's no curing salt in this, so this is not going to keep, you know, a week at the most in the refrigerator is about all it would keep. I'll be honest with you, I don't know how long it'll keep because it's never lasted that long. That's the good part about making these little batches, is if you got a couple people or even myself, I could eat all this in a day. If I take this to work with me, I really could eat it all day, and it's a good source of protein, and there's no junk in it, you know, so to speak. So I don't know, I'm happy with it. Leave me your feedback, and I thank you for watching To The Max Outdoors.